Alice, I know that this is actually the first time you've seen the complete finished version of the film, which is very brave of you to now come up onto the stage and start answering questions about it. Were you horrified?
Well, do you realize that the word Pratibha, which is her name, means genius?
Well, it perfectly fits her after tonight's screening. How does it feel to watch a film like that, your life flash by, apart from perhaps a little bit premature?
It was wonderful to see my former husband.
Is he looking fine?
He's looking really good.
Which he clearly loves you.
I know, I really love him too. It's interesting. I mean, it's our life, and it shows, some of the places that we couldn't remain together. But what I think is clear is that that family, that is my daughter and my former husband, we will always be a family, and we will always, on some level, deeply love each other. It's just impossible for that not to be true.
You don't strike me as a person much interested in her own iconography, so I wondered what it was that had persuaded you to have this film made about you.
Well, Pratibha is very persistent. And I like being with Pratibha, and we've done a film together before, Warrior Marks, and it's just lovely to be able to make something like this and to make it an offering to the community, really, of the planet at this particular time, when people often are feeling so depressed and scared and, wondering if there's a way to shift what is often a really horrible reality. So it's a gift, and I so appreciate her and her partner Shaheen, because I watched them put this together, and they went through incredible feats to accomplish it, and they've done it with such grace and such dignity and such deep caring. It's an amazing thing that they've done, and so I just feel really happy for all of us. We've all won here.
When you look back, Pratibha, at I suppose at human history, it's only in the last 250 years that we've in any way started developing any female icons at all. And I wondered how much of you wanting to make this film is a sort of sense of contributing to that huge chasm and trying to fill, a small part of it at least.
I think that was one of the sort of main reasons, because the way it came about was very interesting, because my partner and I had been staying at Alice's home up in the country one Christmas, and Alice wasn't there. And we watched this pile of DVDs, and they're all about these icons who have changed and shaped American culture. And they were all men, and they were all white men, and we thought, where are the women? And then the most obvious question was, well, where is Alice's story here? Because Alice's story and Alice's writings and everything, as a public intellectual, as a writer, she has shaped so many cultural discourses, not just within America, but internationally. And I think the part of my agenda, very clearly, as a feminist and as a filmmaker, is to make sure that women's stories, inspirational stories, are heard and seen, because too often our stories have been, there's a kind of historical amnesia about women's stories. And, I see it as my obligation, really, as a filmmaker, to ensure that actually we fill those gaps, so that there are stories that younger women can say, well, I too can do that.
Alice, you've been at the forefront, as we saw in the film, of many very important movements in the course of your life so far, and I suppose the two greatest would be the civil rights movement and the women's movement, and I wondered which you felt had achieved most success in the last 5 decades. Which do you think actually has moved on to a point where you're happy with the status quo?
Well, I can never separate them. I'm always amazed that people do separate them. I mean, I'm of color, I'm a woman, I'm a human being. I am watching all of us grapple with the reality that the planet is in such terrible trouble. and that the movement that has to occur is a human movement. We have to really do so much better than we're doing, and we have to really welcome any new ideas, any new thinking, anything at all that can help us shift, the direction that we're headed, which is over the cliff. And if we love this planet, and if we love humanity, and if we love the animals, the other animals, and if we love the trees, and if we love, we have to really work hard to give it a chance to survive. It is struggling for its life.
You mentioned the family unit that started out at the beginning of this film, and today's Mother's Day. And my daughter, who's 8 years old, when I left the house this evening, said, "What, so now you work on Mother's Day as well?" And it's only relevant insofar as I think one of the most distressing parts of that film was the discussion about the estrangement between you and your daughter, Rebecca. And I wondered if, in a way, it's also illustrative of a much bigger issue. I mean, I'm sure that's a huge issue to you, but a bigger issue for all of us, which is this conversation about how to be women in this world now and how to perhaps create a sort of woman-sized shape in a world that hasn't been made in our image.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things that helped me so much with my own mother, who often had to, do so much work that took her away from us, at some point I had to recognize that giving birth to me was not her sole reason for being on the planet. I had to look at my mother and to begin to see and appreciate her as an artist. She was an artist with her garden. And that helped a lot. I mean, this place that we need to come to, I think, is to recognize that other people, even if they are blood relations to you, they have their own reasons for being here. It's not just to be your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your grandparents. They come here for something else too. So I started to see that, the fact that she, being this artist, being this woman who, it used to hurt me so much when she would say, without thinking actually, "I only wanted to have 6 children." And she had 8, and I was number 8. So what did that say to me? But what I had to understand was that women are not in control of their bodies, so that they often are having children that they really didn't plan for, and they still somehow have to make a way, as she used to say so often, a way out of no way for all of us. So it's a kind of respect that we have to have for each other and for the conditions that we should try hard to recognize that people are living under before we, dismiss them.
And have you always been so both pragmatic and self-contained when it came to knowing what you needed to do in order to live? At the beginning, one of the people talking about you, I can't remember who at the moment, said, she had to write to live. Were you aware of that as a writer, and did you make choices? I mean, I'm referring back to the situation with Rebecca, but again, generally, did you make choices that you knew you had to make for you as a human being that perhaps in retrospect you can see might have impacted on your daughter's idea of your relationship with her?
Well, I have a certain spirit, as we all do if we don't suppress it, and I didn't suppress mine. And I have tried very hard to honor it. And that spirit was the spirit of creativity. It was the spirit of standing with people who are in danger. It is the spirit of absolute commitment to the people that I love, including my daughter, of course. But because I am this way, because I was brought up in a culture where to be a mother was never thought of as just being the mother of your child, just your child. That's totally not my culture. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that there are cultures where there's the thing of the hovering mother, the mother who's just focused right just on her child or her family. We never had that. We always thought that to be a mother is to be a mother in the old sense, where you were the mother of everyone in your village, everyone in your community, and everyone, you know, everywhere. And I feel this very deeply. I mean, I really don't even understand how people can claim that they love children and they don't move a muscle to stop the bombing of children anywhere. I just don't get it.
You and Pratibha worked together before on a film called Warrior Marks, which looked at female genital mutilation. Way before, I mean, now it's a big subject on everyone's lips, as it were, but back then, actually, it was seen as quite a taboo, and in sort of liberal, intelligent circles, the idea of forcing our Western opinion on, you know, ancient cultures was also deemed as something that was quite controversial. Was that something that you were conscious of as you were making that film and you were writing the book?
Can I answer that? I think that what we didn't sort of, when we set off to make the film, it wasn't that we were going off and saying, okay, we're now going to go into something, into another culture and make this film on these people and these practices. We actually worked with African women activists, one of whom is here, Afa Dorkino, who, you know, was pioneered the campaign against female genital mutilation. So we, you know, we were working with the women and not coming in and imposing our views. At the same time, we were very clear. I think that one of the things that, you know, what Alice said with Possessing the Secret of Joy and with Warrior Marks was that, you know, torture is not culture. You know, torture, it's a human rights issue. It's not a cultural issue. And just that one point fundamentally changed the thinking around this issue. So I don't think that we in any way were imposing anything. We were working with the women who were saying, we want to try and change this and help us do that.
Alice, you've watched the sort of evolution of feminism for the last few decades, and I wondered if you're surprised that women who have achieved a certain position in terms of the society they live in, where they, you know, can go out to work and vote and do all the things that we take for granted, haven't perhaps turned their gaze enough on sisters who didn't get brought up in that first and second wave of feminism. And I'm talking, you know, about the developing world in particular, or certain parts of the developing world, something that you've been very focused on yourself.
I don't get the question.
The question is whether you think that feminists in the developed world have spent more time perhaps considering their own situation and not enough looking at the environment for women, perhaps for Africa, for example, where if you travel there, you will find women who are leading lives that are basically unchanged by, you know, emancipation and indeed basic, you know, human rights.
Well, part of the problem with Western feminists, I find, is that they take after their brothers and their fathers. And that's a real problem. And that is where, generally speaking, the loyalty is and the solidarity. So that, you know, the struggle for many of these women has just been to get what these men have and to share it with them. And naturally, that means that they don't connect very much or very deeply with the women in the other cultures of the world. And that's really a problem.
Advocacy and writing seem quite disparate in a way. You know, advocacy requires that you go out, you engage with the world, you fight the battles that you want to fight. Writing, on the other hand, requires a great deal of introspection, peace, and calm. Have you found a struggle to balance the two in the course of your career?
Oh, definitely. Yes, and you know, even there's no way of really, for most people to imagine, I think, unless they are writers themselves and trying to juggle, you know, some of the things that I have had to juggle. For instance, when my husband, my wonderful, beautiful, brave husband who drove a movement car that had a bullet hole in it was about to be drafted. That was the moment we decided that we had to make sure that I could produce a child, only to then encounter the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., which was so horrendous that I lost that one. And all the time, I'm trying to create, at that point, history books for teachers of the Head Start children, you know, little kids who didn't have education. And, excuse me, and teaching these women who actually had no education. They didn't even know. I would say to them, well, when do you think slavery ended? This was in Mississippi. And they would say something like, oh, well, maybe 1952. And they were right. I mean, they were right. But it meant that they had to then be taught, you know, the history of so much. As I was trying to, and my husband, we were trying to deal with, you know, not having him go to the Vietnam War, which was a complete atrocity, you know, and it's even so amazing that in our country, they call it the Vietnam War. Why don't they call it the American War? That's what it was, you know? So anyway, the complexities, I mean, they're incredibly intricate, they are deep, you know. And I think that what is good to remember is that it is the spirit that you come into this world with, and if it's not destroyed, if you can keep it, that is what carries you.
You didn't just fight the right fights or the obvious fights. You haven't. And when I say do, it makes it sound like the past tense. It's kind of like a film like this feels like a sort of punctuation. I don't mean to make it sound so final. But you didn't just fight the obvious fights. You also, as we saw in the film, tackled issues within Black American culture. Two of your books were extremely controversial, the Third Life of Grange Copeland and in particular The Color Purple. You married a white man at a time when that was really quite an outrageous thing to do. And I think throughout your life, you've chosen to do things that took it a few steps beyond where everybody else was standing. What is it about you that's made you do that? And also, what gave you the strength?
Well, let's just talk about the marriage. I did that not because it was outrageous, but because it was illegal.
I thought you were going to say because I was in love.
Well, no, I could have been in love and, you know, lived in sin. That would have been fine. But how dare they make a law to tell me that I cannot marry somebody I want to marry? How dare they? So it's that feeling that there is a place that we must not let people push us beyond. You know, we must not.
For the very short time that we've got, I've monopolized you enough, and I'm going to throw it open to the audience now. We have time for about 5 questions, so let's kickstart as quickly as we can, and why don't we go straight to the front row? Don't run any further, there's a lady right there.
Question, but can you repeat I'm trying to lip read, so can you repeat the questions when they come up?
I will, absolutely. There's a gentleman right there behind you in the pink shirt, I think. And it's quite hard to see, so you might have to wave a bit for my sake. Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask a question about your chickens. I too love chickens, and I too am a writer, and I think those facts are connected. But you have written a whole book about them, and I just wondered if you could talk about your relationship with them.
Well, it's a memoir, that book.
May I just repeat the question?
Oh, sorry.
The gentleman is asking about Alice's relationship with her chickens. He's also a writer, and he feels that there may be a connection between chickens and writing, and we're about to find out.
Well, I think that we lose touch often with things that were luminous and numinous and amazing in childhood as we grow, you know, into adults and we go to university and whatever. But I was in Bali at one point, and the only thing that stayed with me from that journey, and I'm trying to compress this, was that a chicken crossed my path, and I was just absolutely transfixed and realized that this was a big part of my childhood, a relationship with chickens and with other animals that I no longer had. And why was that? And what was the impoverishment of that for me? And so as soon as I could figure out a way to do this, which took a great deal of juggling, with neighbors, with my partner, with whoever, everybody, I got a flock of chickens, and I spent at least a year basically just sitting with them, taking really good care of them. They all had names, they all had ways. And I was taken back to my own childhood. I was taken back there through my relationship with these chickens.
Thank you very much. Next question, please. All the way up there is a lady with a scarf on her head, just there, up there. And then I think I saw someone right here who we'd come to next, if we could. See, there's another woman with a green sweater there in the middle of this row. Yes, that's right. Thank you. Yes.
Alice, will you marry me? Because it's illegal.
Alice has just had a proposition of marriage.
Wait. Where is it illegal? In this country?
Yes.
Yeah,
oh, honey, don't stand for that. No.
But will you?
Yeah.
I have a serious question.
Okay, you're going to have to ask that one quite quickly because you're nicking other people's time.
It seemed that you are such an open-hearted person, and you live your life with such an open heart. And we saw the criticism and the fire that you came under when, because of The Color Purple and the film, and because you made a stand against genital mutilation. And I wanted to ask you if that made you change your ways, or made you shut down, made you close your heart, or just move away from society for a while to heal.
Thank you. So she's asking whether the negative impact of The Color Purple changed Alice's behavior in any way, or her feelings about advocacy and so on.
Well, I get tired, and sometimes I get really sick. And I've learned over time to pay attention to that, because I can go very far down. I used to laugh at myself because I would get so exhausted that I would feel like I was in a car, but it felt like I was crawling up the hill to my house. And this I don't recommend. I've learned that you have to take time to heal yourself, to take care of yourself, to do those things that replenish you, and then you're able to give out of the fullness of yourself and not out of your poverty. But it takes a lot of learning. It took me a long time to learn that.
Thank you. We've got time for 2 more questions. There's the lady there that I identified before. And then, oh my goodness. I'll see how long I can stretch it.
Alice, you've obviously left the world many legacies in your impact, but they say that one's children is one's ultimate legacy. In the film, we hear about your grandson and the letters and the poems you've written to him. Have you written more poems to him, and have you had a chance to meet him?
No, I haven't. And do you know the hugging saint from Kerala, Amma? She says something that has been of profound importance to me, which is that at some point you realize that motherhood means to be mother of all the children. And that just dovetails with the way that I was brought up to think about what that means. So our legacy, actually, and now I look at the planet, and our legacy looks pretty bad because I look at all the suffering children, and they should not be suffering. So I would love to see my grandson, and one day he'll get on his bicycle and come over, I'm sure. But until he does, there are millions of grandsons and millions of granddaughters.
Lady here with a hat on. Oh, hold on 1 second, we'll just get you a microphone. I'm going to stop repeating the questions, I'm afraid, because it's going to save a bit of time and we'll have time for a couple more. Please, go ahead.
Good evening, Alice. It's such a privilege to be here this evening. My daughter, Zadie Smith, has asked me to, called me from New York today, just before I left, and she's very jealous, by the way, but she's asked me to thank you for being one of her major inspiration. I'm over here.
Oh, okay. Hi.
She's there.
To thank you for being her major inspiration. And I'd also like to thank you because when I knew little about books, your books were on my then very small bookshelf. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And actually, you've got a very cool son as well who came to a school in London on International Women's Day on Friday and spoke about why young boys should respect women. And he was brilliant and very handsome, actually. Okay, time for one last question. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, but this one up there, just you pick. The man with the microphone can do the choosing, I can't. Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Thank you.
I just want to say a massive big thank you. You have just healed my heart and my soul. My question is, what piece of advice would you give to all the women here to nurture our inner artist?
Whoa, and we've got 35 seconds.
Well, you know, what I think we miss is understanding that this particular planet that we're on, really, if you look deeply into it and closely and attend to its natural behaviors, obviously this planet, I don't know what else is happening in all the other universes and galaxies, but Earth was meant for joy. And as an artist, connect with that joy, and you will be forever fed by it.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a perfect note to close on. Pratibha Parmar and Alice Walker. Thank you.